On the Crested Butte Home podcast this week, my guest is Ben Eaton. And if you've ever seen someone paragliding around Crested Butte Mountain Resort, chances are it may have been Ben Eaton because he is an avid paraglider. So we talk about that sport and how he got into that when he was spending some time in Europe. And we also talk about his business, which is Get Bent. He is a blacksmith and he studied art, and metal is his medium of choice. So I ran into someone the other day who had just discovered the podcast, and she was nice enough to tell me how much she was enjoying it. So I really appreciate that. Really appreciate all of you who spread the word and enjoy the podcast. And as always, you can find me on the internet and Facebook and Instagram if you search Crested Butte's Home. Okay, let's go ahead and get on with the interview with Ben Eaton. Today on Crested Butte's Home, my guest is Ben Eaton. So Ben, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from.
I am from Waterville Valley, New Hampshire. I grew up in Waterville and really got into skiing there, and went to Holderness School in New Hampshire. And decided that I really wanted to become an artist, so I pursued that and went into. It was a fine arts major at St. Lawrence University.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at Waterville Valley, that's the name of the ski area too?
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And you said you got into skiing, so you grew up ski racing as well?
Yes.
Just tell us about that a little.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in an elementary school of 12 kids. That's kindergarten through 8. 12 kids. So there weren't many organized team sports. Obviously with the ski area nearby, the only real competitive sport available was ski racing at the time. So so that's what I jumped into, and it really formed my life. It really showed me a way to meet people and travel and just see the world.
Yeah, skiing has that effect for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back to that. So 12 kids throughout 8 grades?
Yes.
Wow, so you totally have, I just interviewed Andy Eflin, and he had, this is like 1962 Crested Butte. It sounded like they had more kids than that in 1962 Crested Butte. So
yeah, it was tiny. I had one kid in my grade, and one other kid.
Right, which is what he did too. Yeah, he had one other kid in his grade.
Yeah.
Wow.
Waterville Valley was similar to Crested Butte in a lot of ways. It's a small little ski community that had one road in the winter and a dirt road out in the summer. So it was still is quite a bit smaller than Crested Butte, but has a lot of similarities.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, we'll get back to art in St. Lawrence, but how did you end up here then in Crested Butte?
Well, let's see. Well, I after ski racing, I went to Vail and became a ski coach for Ski Club Vail. And while I was there, I found a blacksmith that had just been struck by lightning, and he needed a hand. So he said he needed somebody to help him out. So I stayed with him for 3 years, and he taught me everything I know about ironwork, essentially.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And again, we're going to have to get back to that. But I have all these other questions.
Yeah.
So Vail, how did you end up at Vail? Did you have a connection there?
Well, actually, my roommate in college at St. Lawrence University grew up in Vail.
Oh, okay.
So I had a place to stay. So after that summer after my senior year, I decided to come out and visit with him. I knew I wanted to come out west. I just didn't know what town. So I had a place to stay in Vail and potential job opportunities. And so I stayed with him and then found the ski racing job and then the blacksmithing job, and it kept me there in Vail for 3 years until I really discovered Crested Butte and decided to move here in 97.
And how did you end up discovering Crested Butte and ended up down here then?
There was a really cool race. It was called the Crested Butte Ski Golf. And Oz and GJ put it on. It was a flat iron thing. And it would be, the first day was a golf tournament. And you'd have ski prizes. And the second day was a ski race, and you'd have golf prizes. There was a Calcutta. It was typically the last weekend of the year. It was like second week in April. And that just so happened to be the same weekend as Floushing. So I showed up here in Crested Butte as part of this team. It's 4-man teams, and one of my fellow coaches in Vail, a gentleman named Kent Reichel, who owns Toad Hall here in Crested Butte. He invited me to be on his team, and I came to Crested Butte 3 years in a row for this ski golf and just fell in love with this place. So I was trying to figure out a way during those 3 years of how I could move here and make it work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then did you just jump in and just say, I'm going to figure it out, or what'd you do?
Well, my friend John Murphy, who is also a blacksmith, he and I had met at a blacksmithing conference in Garbondale in like 95, 96, and he was starting his own forge in Gunnison, and neither of us had all the tools we needed or the resources, so we combined efforts and started a blacksmithing shop together. And and stayed together for 3 years until we decided to go out on our own.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now well, let's get into this then. So you studied art at St. Lawrence. So what did you study? Were you already studying metal? Was that already your medium of choice there, or?
Well, I discovered it there, but I was into photography and sculpture. Okay. And photography was what I thought I was going to really become. And I decided that I really enjoyed the sculpture thing and spent hundreds of hours in the art studio messing around and making sculpture. And I realized that that was really my passion, 3D sculpture. So I did a lot of cement sculptures that had iron armatures to them. So essentially the strength within the sculpture was made of steel that I would weld up, and then there'd be a layer of styrofoam, and then there'd be a layer of concrete, and it would take hundreds of hours to do these sculptures. And what I really enjoyed was the free-form, relatively quick idea of making a sculpture out of the steel, the first process of doing these sculptures. So I kind of delved into that and did a lot of my own pretty basic steel sculpture in college. And then when I went to Vail and met Steve Zorachek, the blacksmith, he taught me the finer art of blacksmithing and working with iron and steel.
Okay. And so iron and steel, are those basically the two metals that you work with most of the time, or are there others as well?
Well, steel is essentially the wrought iron isn't made anymore. But steel, when you forge it, looks like iron. So we say it's iron work, and people refer to it as iron, but it really is steel. So I work with steel, copper, bronze, and brass, but probably 95% steel.
Okay. Yeah. And is that just because it's most readily available and easy to work with, or?
Well, it is certainly readily available, and it's far less expensive, and structurally it has a lot more integrity than the other metals. Mm-hmm. But steel, if you look at blacksmithing, the history of blacksmithing, when you heat up steel to about 2,800 degrees, you can form it on an anvil, and that's really the process that I fell in love with.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So you do a lot of different stuff with this. Some of it is just straight up art, and some of it is architectural features like fireplace doors and stuff. So what percentage of your business now is which?
Yeah, good question. Well, it's becoming more and more artwork and less structural steel. But my architectural details include fireplace doors, furniture, door hardware, all kinds of bathroom hardware, and anything else you can dream up out of steel. And then if I ever have downtime, I will work on my own sculpture, my own designs, whatever that might be, wall sculpture. Usually when I'm working on my architectural projects, I'll come up with ideas for my next sculptural projects. In
the midst of doing whatever else, you're like, ooh, I could do this but different, and you go with that basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
Huh.
Yep.
Really cool. Really cool. Yeah. So when you're getting these architectural features, are you kind of given basically a blueprint of what they want, or do you have some artistic vision in the process?
It kind of depends on the client.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of great repeat clientele that I've done a lot of work for in the past, and they've enjoyed my vision. And so lots of times they'll, if we're on the same page as to exactly what they want, they will allow me to go ahead and do all the design work for them.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, that's
what you hope for. I'm sure to be able to express that artistic side as best you can.
Yep.
Cool.
That really does it for me. It's a lot harder for me to build something that somebody else designed.
Sure.
Just because the design of it has a lot to do with the functionality and all the connections and joinery and all these things kind of work together in the design.
Yeah. So on the artwork side, how are people finding you there? Are you doing you're doing some shows, I think, and what else? Where are people finding you?
I did a one-man show at the Center for the Arts last year called Line, and I had about 20 pieces in there. And then I show at the Alpenglow Gallery, which is up on the mountain.
At Mountaineer Square.
Mountaineer Square, exactly. And then the town of Crested Butte just purchased a piece for the Malarty Theater. So I have Arts and Public Places piece that's in the bar area of the Malarty Theater.
Oh, very cool.
Yes.
Is that part of the creative district where they did that? Or?
Yes. Yeah.
That was a shot in the dark, so.
Yeah. Exactly.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a quick break.
In this episode's Crested Butte Real Estate Minute, I wanted to talk about septic systems. Starting in June of 2019, a septic inspection will be required for the transfer of property in Gunnison County. So, for those of you who own property with septic, I would certainly recommend getting a septic inspection sooner rather than later. Obviously, that's not easy to do during the winter. The inspection is good for 2 years, so you can just kind of have that in your pocket if you are even remotely considering selling. I would highly recommend that. My website is crestedbutterealestateagent.com. My name's Frank Consella. Hope you are enjoying the podcast and getting some value out of these Crested Butte Real Estate Minutes. As always, you can go to that website and find my contact info and give me a shout if you have any questions whatsoever about buying or selling real estate in Crested Butte in Gunnison. Back to the show.
We're going to change subjects, and in addition to skiing, and I'm sure biking and a lot of other sports, one thing I know that you're into is paragliding. So how'd that start?
Well, my wife was getting her MBA over in Geneva, Switzerland. And we were right on the border between France and Switzerland. And there's a mountain right behind our little condo that was it's called the Salève, and paragliding is a huge sport over there in Europe.
Yeah, for sure.
And I would be somewhat bored. I had spent a lot of the winter going around to a lot of the different ski resorts skiing, and then once the ski season ended, I was trying to figure out what to do with myself especially because my wife was in school all day, every day.
Yeah.
And I'm looking up and seeing all these people flying over my place. So I found one of the schools that was on the Swiss side of the border, and I started training with them. And normally people train for about a week and get on with their lives. I stayed for 6 months and just immersed myself in paragliding. And in the mornings when the weather was calm, I would do just tons of launches and landings. And in the evening or in the afternoon, when the weather was a little stronger, I would be the shuttle driver that would drive all the advanced pilots, and I'd watch them fly and then drive the van back down from the French side to the Swiss side. I went back and forth across the border probably 8 times a day.
Okay.
You'd fly across the border and then you'd drive across the border.
Because it's cool now, because it's the EU. It's all the same.
Exactly.
Right?
Yep. Yeah, so I had a really great time with it, and I knew that we'd be coming back to Crested Butte, and I had a few friends that had spent a lot of time paragliding. So I knew that it was something that I wasn't just doing for the time that I was in Europe. I was going to be able to come back here and do it as well. And that's exactly what happened. I came back and started flying with my friend Bo Thompson, Bo Jangles Thompson. And he's definitely my wingman. We try to watch each other's backs, and we've been flying together now for about almost 15 years.
Oh, it's been that long, huh?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So when you're first learning, explain that process more. And I guess explain it like if you were starting here in Crested Butte, because I think I know where people usually go, but maybe you could confirm that.
Yeah. Well, Mount Crested Butte is a P4 site, which means it's an advanced site.
Yeah.
So you can't really learn on Mount Crested Butte.
Yeah.
And although we have a student hill up by Nicholson Lake, it's still, we don't have any certified instructors.
Okay.
And I highly recommend being instructed in paragliding. Some people just buy the gear and wing it, but
that sounds crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those sports that you want to know what you're doing before you jump up there.
Yeah.
It's not a difficult sport, it's very, it looks like it's one of those crazy adrenaline sports, but it's really extremely relaxing. And once you've had a couple hundred launches and landings, it becomes second nature.
Okay.
And the place that a lot of people from here learn is Salt Lake City.
That's what I've always heard.
Yeah, point of the mountain in Sandy, Utah.
Okay.
And it has this geological feature there that works perfectly for paragliding. The morning wind will come out of the south, and so you can fly that side of the ridge, and then later on in the day, the wind will switch around, come from the north, and you just go over to the other side and fly to the other side of the point of the mountain.
Gotcha.
So, it's ideal for getting airtime, and then because of that, there's at least 4 or 5 companies that have set up shop there, so you can get all your equipment, you can get all your instruction, and tons of airtime.
Gotcha.
And then get your rating, and then come back to Crested Butte and fly the Butte.
So how many times do you? I assume you start tandem. How many times do you do that before you get to go launch solo, or how much time are we talking?
There's no rule there,
okay.
And especially because I learned in Europe,
sure,
and I learned in French, and I don't speak French.
They're probably like, you just go fly, it's okay.
pretty much. Yeah, it was great instruction, but it wasn't necessarily by the book.
Okay.
So I think it's much more by the book now, and if you start here in the United States, you have to. I think it's like 20 launches and landings for your P1, and then and you have to take a little test, and then you have to.
Sure.
I think it's like 100 for your P2. Maybe I feel like 350 for your P3.
Takeoffs
and landings.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't quote me on those numbers,
right,
but it's somewhere in there.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you have to pass a bunch of written tests and show that you can handle the situations that you might be put in.
Yeah.
It's a very weather-dependent sport.
Yeah.
So I guess the number one thing is that you have to have the ability to, once you're up there on launch, you really want to fly more than anything in the world, but the wind is blowing 18 miles an hour instead of 15, you have to say, sorry, I can't do it today, unfortunately. And that can be very difficult.
Sure.
More difficult than anything else.
Sure.
Yeah.
So where else do people fly locally other than the resort?
There's a great site in Gunnison called Willow Creek, and it overlooks Blue Mesa, or Blue Mesa Mud Flats.
Yeah. Hopefully not next summer.
Yeah, hopefully not next summer. It's a great spot where you can drive your car off to this point that faces west, and probably 80% of the afternoons you have maybe 75, 80, something like that. A westerly wind that comes right in on launch. You can take off and ridge soar. Mm-hmm. So you're basically using the Venturi wind that's coming up that ridge line, and you can stay up for hours.
Nice.
And then land right next to your truck and go home. So there is no shuttle involved. Where for Mount Crested Butte or for a lot of these other places, you have to set up a shuttle.
Yeah.
So you launch, you go somewhere, and then hopefully somebody picks you up, or takes your car down to where the LZ is.
You get somebody else to do it.
Yeah.
What are some other favorite places like outside of the valley that you've gone to?
Well, paragliding's really great like that because you can put it on a plane. So it's a really cool way to travel and see the places you're going. I've had a chance to fly in Hawaii, on Oahu, and
awesome.
Hawaii, the Big Island, and we went to New Zealand. I've been, through Europe and Costa Rica, Mexico. So
nice.
there's so many great places to fly. It's just a matter of having enough time to do it.
Yeah, because your rig's only how much does your rig weigh?
About 45 pounds.
Okay,
but,
so not horrible.
Yeah, and you can buy them much lighter.
Yeah.
So a lot of that 45 pounds is this harness that has an extra airbag and back protection, and then a reserve chute, and your helmet, and your radios, and your extra food, and then your paraglider. So all of that together is about 45 pounds. And they do races where they have essentially the same gear, just scaled differently.
Yeah.
Where it's only like 15 pounds, something like that.
Okay.
You just whittle away the safety parts of the apparatus.
Perfect when gravity is involved.
Yeah. When you're hiking, you don't want to necessarily carry your back protection, which is an extra 20 pounds.
Right.
It might be.
Right. So what are the rules on just hiking up some grassy peak around here? Is that you're allowed to, right?
Yeah, there are no rules other than, if you're in BLM land, that is not allowed because it is it's considered a mechanized vehicle.
Wait, in BLM you mean wilderness or BLM?
Wilderness.
Okay.
Yes, wilderness. So it has pulleys.
Yeah.
So
okay.
And there's a lot of private land where they don't want you to cross over, and there's
okay.
So you have to have the correct launch area where you can launch from, and the wind is coming in towards the mountain. So you have to have the wind coming towards you rather than coming over the back of the mountain. That's one of the biggest rules. So
you can't just climb whatever peak you want and blow off the hike down, which is painful and annoying. Yeah. You actually have to have the right setup.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So have you tried some of the other air sports, hang gliding or speed flying or some of those other ones?
I have tried speed flying, and I've done it like 10 times. It's a great sport. It's very cool. I just personally enjoy going up in thermals rather than going really fast near the terrain.
Yeah.
But it's essentially the same technology. It's ram air chute. So the air is filling up the wing and creating a profile in the wing that allows you to go up, go down, whatever you decide to do.
Yep.
So it's the profile of the wing is very similar to what you'd see on an airplane or a bird. For that matter.
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting that you prefer soaring on thermals versus a sport like speed flying, which would maybe be a little bit more like skiing or ski racing that you did. But that's just like it's a different thing. So you're just looking for a different.
Totally. Maybe it's because I'm 47, but I got bad knees.
Right.
But it's it's a game of chess out there. The actual technical sport of launching and flying your paraglider is one part of it, and then once you've launched, it becomes a sport of looking for rising air. And you can do that in a lot of different ways. There's specific parts of the mountain that put out thermals.
Sure.
So if you're not feeling anything, you go right there. Or you might see a red-tailed hawk that's coring up. Mm-hmm. And so you go over to underneath where he is and you try to find the thermal that he is obviously in, or she. Yeah. They can essentially see the air. They can see those thermals. Uh-huh. So if we can see those birds getting the thermals, then we try to follow their lead.
Sure. Sure. And I've heard the birds will even take your wings sometimes and fly with you. Is that?
They have. It depends on the bird. There's some nests up on Mount Crested Butte that if we get too close to them, they will dive bomb our wings, and they've got really sharp talons, and
sure.
They've put holes in our wings before.
Okay.
So we have to do evasive maneuvers to steer clear,
right?
Of
let them know you mean no harm, and
that. But lots of times, if they're not protecting their nest, they'll just see us and go, "What is going on with these guys?" And they'll come over and fly with us, and they'll be 15 feet away, flying right next to you and looking at you in the eyes.
That's what I've heard. Yeah, that sounds like a really cool thing. Yeah. Going back to hang gliding, you haven't tried that though?
I have not tried hang gliding, and hang gliding really is the reason we're able to do what we do. The Crested Butte Soaring Society was started here in Crested Butte in 1981.
Oh wow!
And, one of the first chapters were the 39th chapters in the United States, and a lot of really brave people that created their own hang gliders and started a sport that really hadn't been proven, and we're total daredevils, and
right.
They paved the way.
Yeah,
and there's a few people in town that hang glide, and there's some really great pilots, and I would love to do it someday. Yeah. It's a little bit more expensive, and it takes some time to set it up on launch. Take it down. So it takes that persistence. But yeah, it's a very cool sport, and we are very similar in a lot of ways.
Yeah. No. Is flying scary to you anymore? I mean, you talked about that a little bit earlier, but is it scary anymore, or is it just you're just kind of doing it now?
Yeah, it is. When I'm on the ground looking up, it's scary, and I get butterflies before I fly. The second I'm out there in the air, there's no butterflies, and I'm not scared. And I should say 90% of the time. Sometimes we'll launch, and it'll seem like a perfect weather day, but the air will be garbage. So you're lots of turbulence, lots of lift, lots of sink, very little control. So at that point, you're basically just pointing it for the LZ, the landing zone.
Trying to get landed as quick as you can and just call it a day.
Yeah, essentially, yes. So in those senses, those times you get a little puckered.
Yeah, I'm sure. Do you, at this point, do you prefer flying or skiing, or where you at?
It's hard to say. I've always likened paragliding to being able to carve huge powder turns with no leg burn.
Okay.
And, so it's similar in that sense that in skiing, carving a turn is somewhat of the ultimate. If you feel that incredible feeling of G-forces and the silky smooth feeling of the powder under your feet, it's really, really hard to beat. But paragliding just I'm able to do that in a different sense. I'm a much better skier than I am a paraglider. So,
what would make you a better paraglider?
Well, you can compete. There's cross country paragliding.
So that's as far as you can go from start to finish, basically.
Yeah, and they have GPS setups now, so that you can they can map where you've been and where you're going, and they'll depending on the race, you can set up a triangle. So you might be landing right near where you took off, but you have waypoints that you have to meet.
Okay,
and it's a totally different sport. It's essentially looking at a larger sense of a mountain range where if you can just get up in one thermal, then the whole game begins. And if you can get up above a ridge line, then you figure, okay, well, if I get up high enough here, then I can travel across over to that next rock crag, which probably has a thermal, and then get up high enough there that you can then get over to the next one, and then make your way. These guys go hundreds of miles.
Yeah,
and, it's pretty amazing. And there's a guy that is from Crested Butte, spent a lot of time here, Mitch Riley.
Okay,
and he was the U.S. champion last year. U.S. paragliding champions, competed in the Red Bull X Alps.
Okay,
and he's definitely one of the best paragliders in the world. Where myself and our motley crew of friends here in Crested Butte, we're soul flying. Just flying for the sake of flying.
Yeah,
and no trophies.
Yeah,
maybe an attaboy in the LZ, but that's about it.
Yeah. So I think, as you talked about distance, so I grew up in Golden, Colorado, and maybe this is just something I heard and it's not true, but I thought for a long time the record was like set from Lookout Mountain and someone landed in like New Mexico or something crazy.
That could be. They'd go a long way from
just
there.
following the whole front range all the way down, but maybe that isn't. I don't know.
No, I believe it. They also have mountain records and then towing records. So I think the record, it goes from Florida to Texas. And essentially, if you get pulled up, not from Florida to Texas, but like the records are in Florida and in Texas. If you can get towed up to 1,000 feet up.
Okay.
And then if you look up in the sky and you see a sky that looks like the Simpsons clouds, little puffy clouds, and we call those cloud streets. Underneath each of those little clouds, those little puffy clouds, is a thermal, and that's what's creating that perfect little cumulus cloud.
Okay.
So you see a little puffy cloud, you go, okay, there's a thermal underneath it, I'm going for that, get up. And that's what both Texas and Florida are famous for. You can go hundreds of miles.
That's funny. I would have thought that it was a mountain thing because you can see cliffs that are getting heated up and use those. But
exactly, that's what I would have thought too. But, and they, personally, I've only really flown in the mountains. I've only towed 20 times, and I much prefer just jumping off a launch on a mountain.
Yeah.
Being towed, but down in Florida, there's some great pilots, and that's the only way they can get up there.
I was going to say, there's nothing to jump off of in Florida, is there?
No.
Or run off of. But going back to that flying versus skiing thing, so is flying easier? As you mentioned, you're 47 now, so is that easier on the body than skiing too?
Yeah, a lot easier.
Yeah,
it's very low impact, 98% of the time.
Yeah.
And Yeah, it's we're up there, and probably the most comfortable chair I own is this essentially a hammock chair that is my harness.
Yeah,
and it's extremely comfortable, and you can sit there for hours. And it's relaxing, and so it's very different from skiing in that sense, where skiing is there for me anyways, lots of adrenaline and lots of impacts. Whenever I get into my gear, I feel like I'm a teenager again.
Yeah,
and then probably ski a little bit harder than I should and feel it the next day, but. And in paragliding, there's almost no impact whatsoever. If you land properly, it can be a 0 mile per hour landing. You can just step down. It's almost nothing.
So does that mean there are like 70, 75-year-old paragliders out there?
There are.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a great sport that you can do to your
That's
later
good
years.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Because skiing gets pretty hard, I feel like, for most folks at some point around that age. But
at some point it does.
But anyway, let's start to wrap it up a little bit. Crested Butte is home for you, so why do you still choose to make Crested Butte your home?
Well, I love the mountains. Crested Butte has always had this magical element to it. I feel like I'm at home here.
Yeah.
When you're always thinking, the grasses could be greener somewhere else.
Of course.
Yeah, and then all you have to do is jump on your townie and ride down elk and see 20 of your friends, and you realize, okay, this is home.
Right.
Yeah, and this is definitely where I want to be. I can travel from here, but this is where I think I'll be what I'll be calling home for a long time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Where can people learn more about you and your company and or local paragliders too?
Yeah, well, for flying, it's the Crested Butte Soaring Society, and we do have a Facebook page. Look that up, and there's all the numbers you need there. And then my business, Get Bent Blacksmithing, is getbentblacksmithing.com. And
it's easy.
CrestedButteBlacksmith.com. A couple others. And my shop is down at the old Glacier School, which is little red schoolhouse that everybody has seen if they've come to Crested Butte. From Gunnison. It's right on the side of 135, just north of CB South. I've got my blacksmithing studio right next to the old 1918 schoolhouse.
So if someone wanted to check out what you do, is that cool? Is that good?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, awesome.
It's on the same property as Horizon Fine Gardens, and also Red Mountain Log Works.
Yeah,
and so we have people stop in there all the time, especially in the summer.
Yeah, for sure. Although I would expect your shop to probably be pretty comfortable in the winter, actually.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. Yeah, I was forging all day. I'm feeling it. Yeah, it's hot, even though it's been pretty chilly around here.
It has been. We've had a real winter so far.
Yeah.
Anything else I should have asked, or that you want to get off your chest, or something?
I don't think so. I think we kind of covered it.
All right. Well, then, one last final question. Who else should I interview?
Well, I was thinking Bo Thompson.
Okay.
Who is my wingman, my paragliding buddy. And I say that not just because of the paragliding thing, because we've just talked about it, but Bo was born here in Crested Butte and has seen it through the 70s, 80s, 90s, and he is an interesting person to talk to get a feeling for what it's like growing up here in Crested Butte.
Yeah, and I've really enjoyed some of the interviews I've done with the folks who did grow up here. It's cool to hear their perspectives. So, all right, well, awesome. Well, thanks so much, and we'll see you out there on the hill.
Cool. Thank you very much, Frank.